My story of about my total crazy family, it is a long one. So you had to be listening carefully on this one. I cannot understand why parents would treat one kid better than almost ignore one other. I cannot understand any families doing this to their kids. My family did that to me. I was the second child in the family. I had an older brother named Andrew. My name is Brandon, by the way. Like I said, this is a long story. And since this all happened when ever since I was a little kid, and I still remember major parts of this through entire childhood until, well, current adult age. So I will go through some of the most important major events in my life. In the beginning, when I was just a kid, very young, I was really beloved by my parents. But eventually, it all changed. It all changed when I started getting to elementary school. My brother Andrew is about 2 years older than me. So my family started treating him much differently. More like they prized him more than just simply over me. He was a bright kid. He was always getting 100% of his tests or A plus, while I had only like between 80 and 89% of my test or a B plus. My parents told him to my parents that always to be like my older brother, study harder. Even if I did study harder, it didn't help. Even if I did get some help from school, like a tutor or something like that, but it didn't even help. I mean, I always tried my best. Even when I did get a 90% of the test, I was very happy to at least make some improvement. When I told this to my parents, they're like, oh, that's fine, that's good, continue like that. But they didn't even care about me. So every time when Andrew got 100 times or 100% of his test or an A plus, they always went out to a family restaurant or anything like it. Just three of them. They left either me at home alone for a few hours, or even just drop me off at my grandparents' house, or just simply just left me at home. For the most part, I was feeling left out, like a like an outcast. It was like I wasn't if I was even supposed to be born at all. If I was born like my brother, smart, maybe all this would have been different. But no. Even in I for entire childhood, even when from first grade to third grade, and I was continued to my other years at school, I thought maybe if I went to middle school or perhaps in high school, maybe I will be a bit will get a better result from my test and all that. Well, it did get a little bit better, maybe from 90 to maybe 95%, but that was even not enough for my parents as that standard. Even my childhood, well, was completely dark. I did had a few friends at the school, but my brother just called me non-bright kid when I was in elementary. When we was in middle school, and he still continued to call me that. But we were in high school, it was a complete a whole different level. He called me stupid kid or dumb kid. Even my even when it was my brother's birthday, they always had a big cake and all that and celebrated with gifts and all. But when it was my birthday, they just ignored me. I didn't even have a cake. I didn't even got an even single present from my parents at all. But the only ones that did give me anything for my birthday was my grandparents. My grandparents were from my dad's side of the family. They were overall they were just like my adopted parents. They loved me. They loved me and adored me. They treated me as I was equal, not like if I was a second class or even outcast. for a while, my grandparents was even aware of this treatment, and I wasn't even sure what to tell them about this. I was just a young kid at the time. And even when I went to high school, well, my family was always doing this. I even had a part-time job at a grocery store, but every single time when I got my salary from the work, my brother took it from me. I mean everything. He didn't leave a single dime, even of my own pay. That was my hard work. When I told this to my parents about this, they just told me that the money that I earn goes to the family, and I wasn't allowed to keep anything of it. I mean, if this was supposed to go to the family, then I am part of the family. But they was telling me I wasn't allowed to keep anything. So I tried to hide some of the money in my room, but for some reason my brother always found it. Every time when I had this small box, when I hid it different places, either in the closet or under the bed or some other places. Every single time when I did find it, there was either a complete empty or just single bill that's even he took a $10 bill or $20 bill. One time, one time I had managed to save up at least $1,000. I wanted to have the money so I could just simply buy a game that I wanted. But one day, as opposed to doing it, I found all the savings I had gone, and I knew already who took it. Because later the same day, I saw my brother playing a brand new game. I knew it was pointless to even to confront them about this or even tell my parents just to get back the money. I was working hard enough to save it. I was even considered to just simply quit, but in the end, I didn't. But I managed to at least save up and some of the money in different locations in the house, or at least some part of my room that my brother wouldn't consider it to find. Even though it wasn't a large amount of money, probably I'll say maybe as a few $100 at most, maybe 400 or 500. And even if I did spend that money on something like a new game, my parents would scold me for not giving them money. So I didn't know what to do. And every time when I was in school, my brother had his small group of friends. They teased me, called me stupid kid, dumb kid all the time. I mean, they didn't do any physical or anything. They just courted me or surrounded me and just called me that names. And even the teachers prized my brother because they called him smart kid or he's a bright kid, that he has a good future and all that. I was not happy about this. Even when I was so alone at home, I mean, my parents was working and my brother was out with his friends. And every time when I was interested in a girl, Andrew always got between me and her and stole her away from me before I can even ask her out or anything. And the only ones in my family that loved me equally was my paternal grandparents, like I mentioned, and my two older cousins, Erica and Jordan. They were the only ones that really much simply loved me for who I was. And after I finished high school, I did try to apply for college, but I didn't get in. And my parents had enough of me. So they simply just kicked me out of the house and told me I wasn't their son anymore. I asked them for what reason. Is it because that I didn't get into college? They said pretty much. I mean, that was my first choice. I had sold waiting for the second result for my second choice. But they didn't care. Because in their minds, the first choice is always the one that they should be going for. And my brother was already in college at the time when I was finished my high school years. I had enough. So I took from the money that I had saved up It wasn't much, maybe $1,200 to $1,400, something like that. And I went to my grandparents. And since my grandparents lived across town and I didn't have a car, even if I would, I wouldn't even simply would even the car would have been in my parents' name, not in mine. So even despite that, even if I wouldn't even have the money to just simply buy a used car. Like I said earlier, my parents always told me the money would go to family first. So when I showed up at my grandparents' house, they were surprised to see me, and even my older cousins, Erica and Jordan, who is about 2 years older than me, around the same age as Andrew, they were there and they just like, "Oh hey, cuz, what you doing here?" said Jordan, and I was like, I don't know. I just come here to tell you all that I am homeless. My grandma was just who was in the kitchen doing it. I don't know what it was, probably cooking something. When she heard that, she dropped that plate and like stared at me with big eyes. It's like, homeless? What do you mean, Brandon, sweetie? Well, let's say my parents kicked me out of the house and they told me I'm not their son anymore. And when my grandfather heard that, he was actually watching some TV when he looked at me with a red, well, basically a red, furious face. And he didn't scold me, though. He asked me almost with angry tone, "What did they just do?" Well, I told him once again, and they then asked me for what reason they just simply kicked me out. I told them because I didn't get into the college that of my first choice. And my grandmother, sweetheart, sweet lady, just said, for the first time I saw her almost so angry that she almost red as my grandfather. She was like, "How could they? You earned that." And apparently they weren't even aware of all the things that were happening in my family. Well, I told them that's not all of it. "What do you mean?" said my grandfather again with angry tone. Well, it's a long story, but basically I told them what everything that happened for the past 18 years in my life. That made them even more furious. I told them about my birthdays. I didn't get anything from my parents and how they treated me. They treated me as like an outcast, and that every time my aunt had saved money, they always took it away from me, especially my brother. I mentioned one time when I had saved up $1,000 for a new game. And I had mentioned this new game to Erica and Jordan before. And Jordan had mentioned this. "Oh, yeah, you remember that you told me about the game." Yeah, but he took all the money so that he could buy his own game, and I didn't spread it up to my parents because they told me always, once again, the money I earn goes to the family. I was like, well, if they go to the family, I'm part of the family. Apparently, I was never considered as their son this whole time. My grandparents was so furious. Then my grandmother said something, and she said, "I'm gonna have a serious talk with my son." And she's called up my dad, and he was like, "Oh, hey, mom, what can I do for you?" But she screamed at him. Let's say there was not a friendly words. She was screaming, cursing at him. How could he just kick out his only youngest son? And and then suddenly he's just laughed about saying, "Oh yeah, you can keep him. He's useless for us. He's a useless kid. We don't want to keep him anymore." And not only that, my grandfather was the CEO of an IT company, which eventually some of the family would take the next step. And they told him that they would not allow him to inherit anything from his parents, which made him to flip out. And he started yelling that he is the only son and that he deserved the money. But they said, "You are not our son anymore, and we changed the will so that you would get nothing from it. Not you, your wife, or your oldest son would not get anything from us. Of course, that made him angry, but just ended on the phone call, and I was heartbroken. I tried for all the time. I mean, I felt so heartbroken. I tried all this time to win my parents' love and respect. But in the end, it was for nothing. They seemed to not even care about me a single bit. In the end, I was taken in by my grandparents, and I even had my mail transferred to their house from, well, my grandfather went over to my parents' house and kept the mail and later eventually have it changed my address to their house. And among the mail, it was a letter from the second college that I applied for, and I got in. And my grandparents told me they will pay for my college. And even though I didn't tell them that they didn't have to, but they wanted to do it anyways. And Jordan and Erica told me, just go for it. So I decided to study business as a major at college. I want to start my own business one day. So I went to college, and it was a great time that. And it was also at the college when I met one particular person that will be that will be very important to me the rest of my life. Natalie. Natalie was a girl around the same age, and she was so beautiful. She had chocolate brown hair and brown eyes, and she was the most beautiful girl I ever met. And after 6 months, we started dating. And about the time of our senior year of college, we were engaged. And after we finished college, I moved back home, and me and Natalie, we bought a house in my hometown, and I started my business called Starlight Construction Incorporated. It was a construction company. And I had a lot of help from my grandparents since, well, I just, they supported me financially. And even though in the beginning it was a little bit hard, but after about a year, we had a lot of clients from out of town and even the different cities surrounded in the same region. My business was getting more and more better for every time. And after we had us doing a great success in my company, and I had made a lot of money at the time, and I thought it was this point it was getting that was I was ready to get married with Natalie. I had decided to invite my parents, even though in the beginning I wasn't the one who wanted to do it. I mean, I had told Natalie all about my family even when I was in college. She was shocked. She was really like terrified or horrified on hearing how my parents treated me. But her wish is that they want my parents, at the wedding. So, to make her happy, I agreed. So we went to see my parents, and this is the first time I've seen my parents in at least a few years, since I was 18. They were shocked to see me there with Natalie standing there. At first, they probably wouldn't want to let us in, but they chose to let us in, and I didn't have a small chit chat with my parents. I just went all the right down to business and told them that me and Natalie are getting married, and that we want to invite my family to my parents and Andrew to the wedding. It turned out during this time, Andrew had started working with my dad's house building company. They were building houses throughout the entire state or something like that. And when I introduced Natalie, Andrew somehow didn't show any. He didn't show that he didn't care and started telling Natalie that she should leave me and be with him because he's more good looking and well off and he's going to be the next CEO. And I was just sitting there stunned of what my brother just said. And not only did we make it more horrifying, my parents just simply agreed all both together that he should do it. And I was like, in their quote, Brandon is just an ugly, stupid, and had even gone to college. But what they didn't know, I actually went to college. But said Natalie, she just sat there silent. I didn't know what to do. And before I was about to speak, she spoke out and told them how could they be so stupid and ignorant. She said, how can you be so ignorant about treating your own son like this? You said that he didn't go to college, but he did. My parents looked at each other and said, what? He didn't get that in first college. I said, no, I got into the second choice of college, and I studied business. And they started laughing like he actually didn't know anything about running a business. When I mentioned, when I asked them, do they know anything about a company called Starlight Construction Incorporated? And his dad's like, yeah, that's the biggest construction company in town. So what? That's my company. And they were judging me the whole time. I like I told them that I was the founder and the CEO of Starlight Construction Incorporated, and I was the one of the biggest suppliers for my dad's own company. And when I said, well, it turned out we will stop doing business with your company from this day on. My dad realized if that happened, his company wouldn't even be able to get much work, and he got so pale. And at that moment, Andrew, who didn't understand what was happening, he laughed and told me that was just a lie. All of this about my company and all that. I went to college, but then, showing the proof, I showed him my business card, and Andrew, who looked at it, he went pale as my dad. They realized I wasn't lying. The company, Starlight Construction Incorporated, was my own company. I was a hard studying back in college to understand. I even worked for my grandfather a little bit to understand to management how to run a company. And my parents tried to apologize to me, and I told them after this meeting I would not regret to leave, that they would not be invited to my wedding, and I would cut them off all contact, and that they will not be in my family anymore, and I will stop doing business with my dad, and which made my dad more scared and begged over and over to me reconsidered, but I just simply didn't care. And me and Natalie just stood up, and before we left the house, my dad tried to tell me to reconsider once again. But I just simply told him with a big smile, like, why? You treated me like an outcast. You didn't even care anything about me. Every time when Brandon and when Andrew had his birthday, you, Mom, and Andrew went out. You never invited me. And also sometimes when you were having a school road trip, you never included me. Every time when you and your family was doing some family vacation or family trip, I was never included. You treated me as if I was like a shadow, as if I never existed. How dare you to treat me now differently now knowing who I am? You probably vague me to this. You probably want just to saying this that knowing that I'm rich, I have a successful company. But this, to be honest though, Dad, no, correctly, stranger, I'm not your son anymore. And I was really happy to once I had a strong hope that I would have been able to rebuild my relationship with my family and hope that we could just be more friendly towards each other. And I was willing to accept your apologies. And Andrew, and he looked at me with a pale face. I would really have loved to be your younger brother. I really looked up to you. The whole time, I really looked up to you. But you treated me like trash, including my own parents. And this is the things I get? You try to hit on my fiance? I cannot say any other words than like, you don't deserve me as your brother. And like I said, I'm not gonna do anything. I was willing to help all of you. If being financial support, with if needed, that made my parents realized I was actually not only to be invited and not only to be start to rebuild my relationship with my family and hoping that to rebuild it. I would have even been there even as financial support, but give them money if they need it. And they start crying and realize their biggest mistake. And why, once again, before I left, my mom told me that she did love me, but deep down, I don't believe her. I just said that I don't believe you. And for that this day on, you two are no longer my parents, and you, Andrew, is no longer my brother. And don't try to reach out to me. I will not want to help either of you ever again. And we left. We actually went to my grandparents' house, and Jordan was there, and he I told them over dinner what happened. They were like, Jordan laughed like, really? Your parents actually expected that you would simply forgave them like that. And Natalie like, well, you should have seen their faces. They were so distraught. They were so devastated knowing how all this. But my grandfather, he laughed like, yeah, I'm so sorry. If I had raised my son even better. But I told my granddad, don't worry about it. To be honest, I seen you and grandma as my real parents. That made my grandmother smile and cry, and she said that like I was like a son to them, even all this. I told them I will make sure that if they will need social financial support, even at they living in retirement home or anything. But my grandfather laughed like, me, retirement home? Not for a long time as long as I live. But we all laughed at that. But we just having a good time as a family. Even before my wedding, Andrew, of course, he tried to reach out to me a few times to ask me for forgiveness that he was acting like a complete idiot all these years, and that he had been like a brainwashed by our parents because they treated him as a favorite and not me. But I didn't believe a single word, except that at least that he acknowledged that they treated him as a favorite and over me. I even asked myself, what exactly made them to sort of make him a favor over me? Despite that I only had a bit lower grade back in elementary and in middle school and high school, I don't even get it though. Despite that I was harding studying harder and I do showing some progress. I was maybe hoping my parents realized I was just maybe just not smart enough as my brother, but I was dedicated to devoting to be proving myself. I did improve myself a few times, but my parents just ignored that. They treated my brother even better than over me. I was really heartbroken. And even though I was really just sad about it, even my own parents at this point tried to reach out to me. My dad even went to my company hoping that I could change my mind and hope them still be their supplier of, well, the needs of things that needed. But I told them my answer is still no, and I won't change my mind. And even my mom tried a few times to reach out to me, or Natalie tried to act more or less a friendly, but it didn't work. Then the wedding day came. I only invited my grandparents, my cousins, and a few other relatives that were on my side. After after I came to living with my grandparents when I was 18, after we kicked out, they informed the rest of the extended family in town about my family's situation or how to treat me. And I should say this: my grandfather's word means everything. He was like the king of the entire family. He's like the biggest. His word was the law in family. Well, kinda. So after, even when my other relatives asked me about this more details, I confirmed every single thing. And even some other families actually went to talk to my parents about this. At first, they tried to deny, but eventually, other extended family members, they realized everything I was telling them was true. After some time, my other relatives started just ignoring my parents because of all this. And at the wedding, I actually had asked Jordan to be my best man, and Erica had been asked by Natalie to be her maid of honor because Erica and Natalie, they were close. I mean, they really become really good friends. And I eventually did learn my father's company did didn't end. It did survive, but it has less work. But he did have some new clients now and then, and it was getting. I was considered to maybe helping them with this, but I might not. But it depends on what I feel for in the future. But anyways, just 2 years after our wedding, we learned that we were blessed with twins, a boy and a girl. We named the girl Lauren and the boy Thomas. And of course, we would not do the so called favorite child and outcast treatment as I went through, because we will treat our kids equally. And I will tell them when they're old enough about their grandparents and their uncle, how they treated me back when I was a kid in their age. Maybe they might want to be change their mind or change their ways when they, well, meet. I actually decided to let my parents and my brother to meet Lauren and Thomas when they're old enough. So until then, my, well, family, I hope that we could rebuild our friendship or relationship in the future. Thank you for listening.